Okay. All right. So we're starting Hebrews because some of you guys wanted New Testament. Apparently nobody wanted Hebrews, but we're going to do Hebrews because I happen to be working on it. And Daniel sent everybody the translation. And you go, why can't we just read the Bible? Why do you always read the translation? Well, that's part of what I'm working. I'm not doing a translation of the Bible, but it's part of other work I'm doing. That's why. So we're going to do Hebrews. I don't know how long that will take. And then from that, we'll turn into the prophets. And I don't know. We'll talk about the order that we want to do those when we get to it. But I mean, that's outlining the next. You know, I'll be dead by the time we finish this.
Wow, that is
You'll be dead by the time you finish Hebrews?
No,
Prophet.
the prophet.
Oh, gotcha.
It took us 2 years to go through Revelation, didn't it? You weren't with it. I did Revelation in Sunday school. 2 years.
Sounds like we should do that again. There's a lot to unpack
After the
there,
prophets.
I'm sure.
Okay, fine by me.
Do it again.
We get to the prophets, we'll do Revelation. The apocalypse. That works for me.
You can let Daniel know you've got your curriculum planned out for the next.
Exactly. What am I doing with this? So,
Yeah.
what did you just say?
So we could do it play by play as it's actually happening.
I just gotta say, I'm really impressed to see Janie and Kenny here this morning. I mean, you had a late night last night.
Why are you saying that?
Because I know that they were at the game yesterday, and so the game was late yesterday, and they couldn't have gotten home before midnight.
Oh, no, we didn't get home before 1.
I believe that. So I'm impressed. I just had to say that, sorry.
We're that committed to Donald and his teaching.
Yes.
See,
Yes. Okay. When you sit down to write a letter, what are the parts of a letter? What do? You start at what?
Greeting.
Dear. So you're writing your wife a letter. The first thing you write is, no, it's not.
Yes.
A salutation.
No, it's not that. The first thing you write is the sender. You put, if it's a business letter, your name and address will be at the very top.
You said if we write.
I'll write a letter. But even when you write that, you're still going to put her before you say dear her. So sender, the parts of a letter, sender, recipient. This all makes sense. Greeting. Usually we put date. And we usually do sender, recipient, date, greeting. Body, closing. That's the parts of a letter. And those have been the parts of the letter since antiquity. I mean, it just makes sense. So that's what you expect. And if we Paul, sender, and then a little descriptor. Paul and all the brothers. To the recipient. And grace to you, that's Paul's standard greeting. I don't know why that's doing that, but ironically, James has the most standard letter form. James to the 12 greetings, and that is the standard Greco-Roman thing, and it's just the word greetings. It's not hard. So then you'll have the letter, and Paul, the body of the letter has elements as well.
Okay.
Okay, are you there, Rick?
We are here. Sorry, I didn't mute my microphone.
That's okay. I didn't comb my hair apparently. So,
So did the diaspora stuff between, the Galatians and that, the earlier New Testament books and this one? Because he is
the
saying-
dispersion is the distribution of the church, not the church, the Jews.
Right, that's what, well, he said the 12 tribes, that's why I asked it, because that happened, I thought, after they destroyed the temple, again, right, the second time or whatever.
The dispersion is usually the result of the, well,
Sorry, I'm asking the history.
yeah, I understand. It's not, no, that's in 130. And this is way before that. So it's just the way they talk about the Jews scattered throughout the Greco-Roman world. All right, so Hebrews. This is in my way. Long ago. He doesn't have any of that stuff. He has no epistolary opening at all. So we don't know who wrote it. We don't know to whom he's writing. We can summarize some things. And so you've got guesses, but it jumps right into it doesn't even have a greeting. It just jumps right into if it's an epistle, it's jumping right into the body. And it's not incomplete though. This is self-contained and it's a complete thought. So, I mean, it's actually a sermon type thing. And so okay. But you don't know to whom he's talking. So why do we call it an epistle? Because at the end, he does the standard epistolary closing, which is at the end of a letter, you summarize, do this, do that, and be nice to one another, and all this.
Do we know who wrote it? Was anonymous?
So that I'm getting to that. So, okay. And then it closes with a benediction. All right. Okay. So now, who wrote it? Tradition, it's put in the Pauline corpus. So tradition is that Paul wrote it. And but the only thing we know for a fact is Paul didn't write this. It's not the only thing we do know. Because the author describes himself in ways that Paul would not do. How shall we escape? This is the letter. If we neglect so great a salvation, it was declared at first by the Lord, and it was attested to us by those who heard. Paul would never put himself in the second generation like that. He just doesn't know. I heard firsthand. Galatians, I got wandered out in the desert and had the Spirit talking to me directly. Yeah, I went and saw Peter, but they didn't give me nothing. He makes that very abundantly clear. So he would just never write this. So we don't know who this is, but we know it's their second generation. That's all we know. We don't know to whom he's writing. We don't even know why. So then why are we reading this? Well, it's really good. Hebrews is good. It's got good stuff in it. And that's why people read it. It's written in good Greek. So the guy he either was competent or he hired a competent secretary, which happens in the ancient Near East. But that's all we know. Now, the argument of the letter and the teachings of the letter are important. And they're important for our growth. And it's clear, it's a letter heavy on who Jesus is. You know, aren't all the letters like that? Now he's doing kind of a theological thing here. He's trying to establish why what Jesus did matters. So, I mean, the Christ is something special, is his point. So anyway, this is Hebrews, and so don't be confused by those that think it was written by Paul. And the suggestions are plenty as to who wrote it, but we would have no way of knowing. So one of the church fathers, but God only knows. And most commentaries conclude with, that's all we can say. We don't know who wrote it. All right. Let's dive into it. Oh, wait a minute. When was it written? Paul died in the 60s, middle 60s. So his letters are all earlier than that, which predate the Gospels. The epistles of Paul are older than the Gospels. Most of the Gospels were written in the 60s. John may have been as late as the 90s. But the synoptics, Matthew, Mark, and Luke, probably in the 60s. Jesus was crucified
30.
in the 30s, yes. The exact date is, there's books written on it, somewhere in there. In fact, we have a friend that wrote it. We have it. I have the copy of it. So anyway, what are the arguments that he's going to, the epistle seems to be addressing people who are going back to Judaism, and he's dumbfounded. He doesn't understand. Why would you do that? Until the whole epistle is why that's not a good idea. And one of the arguments that you're going to make is that Jesus is the mediator of a better covenant because he operates in a better temple. That's what I'm going to make, because he's in the heavenly temple. And that'd be a prime opportunity to discuss the destruction of the temple in Jerusalem if it had happened. But he doesn't. He makes no mention of the destruction of the temple. So I and others, to me, that's an argument that this thing was written before the destruction of the temple in 70 AD. The Romans did this in AD 70. So late 60s is when this letter was written. That's my opinion. That's not a hard and fast argument, because maybe he just didn't think it was pertinent, and that's why he didn't mention it. I mean, it could be, because he is talking about the heavenly tabernacle, not the earthly one. So that's not the be all and end all, but it's good enough for me, or makes sense to me. But that's about all we can say.
We know where it was written from.
No, don't know where he was or to whom he was. He does make reference to those from Italy say hi. And so we're not quite sure what that means. I'm writing this to a church in Rome, and the expatriates from Rome are saying hi back at you, or some other thing. It's too casual a reference to tell us anything. But there is that. But other than that, we don't know much. So it's a big mystery.
If you were to make a bet, who would you think wrote it, or?
I don't even proffer.
Okay.
Don't even proffer a guess. Some have even suggested Priscilla, a female author. The real question is, why is it missing the epistolary stuff at the front? Did it fall off? That's one suggestion. Literally fell off. Was it removed so it could be more universal? So that people wouldn't read it. It's only two. But they didn't do that with any of Paul's letters. So we just don't know.
That would be a good case for this Priscilla, because it would have been perceived differently by a lot of.
Yeah, but it would have ever gotten the initial reading. I don't know. There's nothing in it that bespeaks a female point of view per se. So it's could be, but who knows? Are you hearing that? Okay. I live in a strange world. All right, well, let's begin. Hebrews 1:1. I'd call it to you, but she'd panic. So, Mrs. Brown, would you and your lovely daughter read this for me? Do you guys know what I'm doing when I say that? Yes.
So at many times and in many ways, God spoke to our fathers by the prophets.
Pause. All right.
Which one are you reading?
It doesn't matter. She's reading ESV,
That's what it looked like. Yeah, you had.
two of them.
Didn't know if you had a reason for that.
Always do. Just to give alternatives. But anyway. Contrasting how God spoke in the past by the prophets. No argument there. Nobody's going to say anything. No Jew, no Christian. Nobody's going to say, yeah. All right. But he spoke to our fathers. It's an interesting phrase. In verse 2,
But in these last days, he has spoken to us by his son, whom
pause. Now, this is where it gets a little interesting. Let's think about phrase at a time. That phrase. What's he saying? This is the Greek word. Have you ever heard of the word eschatology? Which is study of end times. From eschatos, that word right there, which means the end. It says in these last days. That is loaded words, loaded language. What do you hear when he says that?
Oh, I was just saying, we're seeing the end, I guess.
Yes, and by the end you mean.
Depends on what they mean.
Well, what do you mean?
Well, I don't know. The end
You don't have an opinion of what the end is? It's not like it's right or wrong. I just want to know what your opinion the end is referring to.
The end of
Okay. What were you going to say?
kind of, that's at first, before you gave us the, is that Greek?
Yes.
My thought was the end days, like the return of,
Yeah, Book of Revelation stuff.
like the same thing, but then I thought maybe they mean the most recent days. Like in some sense, like for all of us.
Oh, these last few days, you mean,
Yeah,
sort of thing?
yeah.
No, it's a reference to the eschaton. And that's the term you use, eschaton, the end. Yeah, so the letter starts off with, and the terminology you'll hear is an apocalyptic bent. Apocalyptic. That's the Greek word for Revelation, which is the title to the last book, the Apocalypse. And that's usually a discussion of how the world's going to work out. And that's what he starts off with. But notice how he phrases it. These last days. So what's he saying?
Read it as there's three sections: before Jesus, during Jesus, and waiting on Jesus to come back. And so for me, when you talk about final days or last days, we're in that final section of time, which maybe for them it may have been 2 weeks, but obviously it's been longer.
Okay, well, I mean, that works. Anybody else? He's clearly saying that we are in the last times. And I don't think he quite would have divided up the way you did. But the point is, the coming of Jesus, the coming of the Messiah, was the great inauguration of the eschaton. And we lose track of that because we get Hal Lindsey and his ilk have done a lot to distort the way people view this stuff. And it's not really casting aspersions on them. It's just, that's the nature of it. The church, the coming of Jesus marked the beginning of the eschaton. That's what's going on in Acts 2 with the pouring out of the Spirit. And if you read his sermon, Peter's sermon. It's done in terms of the eschaton. In these last days, I will pour out my spirit, is what Paul says. So they're making a connection. The coming of Jesus and the day of Pentecost, two separate events, but related, obviously, mark the beginning of the eschaton. So we have been in the eschaton, the end times, since Acts chapter 2. Well, that's a long time ago. We're still in the eschaton. We're waiting, and we actually have, there are parts of the New Testament epistles that are addressed this. Now, wait a minute, did you say Jesus was coming? It's been 2,000 years. And they're going to talk about that some.
Yeah, wasn't there a pretty strong belief that John would be around?
Yes. And so
lends support to the idea that maybe this was written before Revelation.
yeah, you could, yes. And there are novels out there where John's still alive. He's just this old man living in Turkey or something. It'd be a great novel. What's your name? John. Okay. So then this part, in this last days, he's spoken to us. Now, the ESV did his son. Let's look over here. Upon the end of the days, these. So on these last days, he has spoken. That's what that Greek is. You see, if you look down here, you'll see stuff, and it says we, first plural days, to us, in, and that's the word for son. Notice there's nothing in between in and son. It's not in his son. Where did the ESV get his? And the ESV is not alone here. I'll tell you where the ESV got it. They got it from this. Dadgummit. There we go. No, I didn't. Okay. But the RSV has a son.
So does the NET.
Yeah, the net does too. What's King James had? Yeah, so King James adds his. And what do you notice about that his?
Emphasize.
No, it's in italics.
Emphasize.
That does not mean emphasize. It means the exact opposite. If it's in italics, it means it's added for clarity. Now, in our language, that means for emphasis. It's amazing how many people. Yeah, no, means he was added. So at any point, so look what he does. Let's go back to the ESV. Just because a lot of people, what version do y'all use? NIV, what do you have? ESV, what do you have, Tom?
Yes.
What do you have? NIV? I can't hear you.
NASB.
New American Standard? NASB? What do you have? Ooh, detention. Within the house. You both use the NIV? Well, you're not using anything right now, apparently. Don't need a Bible.
On
Got
stream.
it.
So, by the way, if you're looking for a Bible, the Net Bible, New English translation, the value of the net is not the translation. The translation is prosaic and mediocre at best, but it has a series of notes. See all those little numbers? The notes are gold mines. And that's why I always have it open, because it tells me stuff. And that should tell you something. And so if you go to Martell's, you want the full note version, costs you $30 or whatever. Unless you get leather and all that crap. But anyway, It's worth having, actually. New English translation is what it stands for. But don't confuse it with nets, which is New English translation of the Septuagint. You don't want that, though you might. So I recommend that as a change of pace and just to have the notes for your reference. Anyway, the point is it's by a son. And now why would he phrase it that way instead of his son? And you're going, oh, we don't know, Donald, just tell us.
That's exactly what I was thinking.
Trying to get y'all to think.
That's the question what to do.
Well, it is his only son, but he's,
It's not just like he has three sons, it's one of his sons.
well, but you're actually getting to it that way. It's not that it's Jesus. It's not that it's Jesus, but that it's a son. It's his position as son that's being stressed, and not his person per se. A prophet's a hired hand. Son is family. Remember, that's what he's contrasting. Is prophets versus a son. So our revelation, this is the first thing that he's bringing up. The whole point of the letter is going to be, why are you going back to the old? What we're doing is so much better. And the first thing he brings up without even addressing all that is, they did prophets. We have a son. Why would you choose prophets over a son? Unspoken. That's underlying all this. He spoke to us by a son. And because sons can be of all sorts. What's it say here? That's you.
Whom he appointed the heir of all things, through whom he also created the world.
Pause. All right. So he's going to point to heir of all things. What does that mean? Oh, you know what an heir is. He's going to inherit what? Everything, all things, all. Okay. Through whom he what? So Jesus, the Son, is the creator. Now, in the beginning, what? Just one. God created the world. So he's making a claim there. Kind of distant, but it's there. And through whom he created the world. Again, why would you go to a prophet when we have the guy that's going to inherit everything and the guy who made everything? And you can see it's for or her, if it's Priscilla. I don't have dogs that on. It's frustration. Verse 3.
Glory of God and the exact imprint of his nature, and he upholds the universe by the word of his power, after making purification for sin.
Okay, we got several ideas, so we'll stop. He's the radiance of the glory of God. Some of these, what was it I was reading? Well, that's an old version. So, an effulgence was one version of what he is. Let's see what they do. So, look, if you look down at the bottom, you can see what the word means. Who is the radiance of the glory? Why is he saying that? He's the brightness of the glory.
Trying to tie that Jesus and God are one. That's how I see all that.
read it. I mean, that's gonna be underlying it. That's not what he's saying. Again, it's not that you're wrong, it's just not what he's focusing on. It's the, what just happened? Again, it's the contrast to this, sorry, this. Prophets versus Jesus. All of this is how Jesus is better than the prophets that he spoke. The radiance of the glory. What an odd phrasing. Why? What's glory? That would be a reflection of it. Glory is, it's depicted in the Old Testament as light. It's what makes him shine. Or at night, it's a cloud. So you get all this. It's a, so his glory is the light. It's the stuff that he shines, hence the brightness of his glory. So Jesus is the glory, if you will. He's the brightness of the glory. So when you see the shining of God, that shining is Jesus. That's who he is. So the glory of God, that's who Jesus is. He is the glory. And you want to go to a prophet? Again, he hasn't said any of that yet. He's setting the stage for it. But that is where he's going with it. Well, I mean, prophets are cool, don't get me wrong. Isaiah, yay. But he ain't this. So you can, he's scratching his head. He just doesn't get it. And not only is he the brightness of the glory, so that which makes God glorious is Jesus. He's the caricature. Now we mean something different by that. Caricature of his hypothesis. Now, if you've done any work on the Christological thought of the first 2 centuries of the church, this word shows up a lot. Hypothesis. It's your essence, your nature. And it's stuff that makes you go, when you're reading the first 2 centuries, and I just don't. Anyway, but he's actually using this word. Again, contrasting with the prophet. He's a son who is that which makes God glorious is the Son, and he's the form, the express image, down at the bottom there, of his nature, of his being. And this is the exact expression of his nature. Let's see what the net did. It's strong language, it's the point.
This reminds me of, I don't know if anybody else goes through this, but like just trying to exalt God in my own prayers, or even in the church, certainly we had phrases like Lord of Lords and King of Kings, and I don't know about anybody else, but I struggle to come up with something that's adequate for my praise, and because I often think, no matter what I can say, it doesn't reach his level of, it's not a good enough adoration or praise or something. That's almost,
Yeah, the language falls short.
He's struggling. Yeah, the language falls short. He's struggling for a way to say, I can't raise this man high enough. That's the way I read those.
But I also see this as a definition of who Jesus was, that we can't just leave him in the way of, well, he was just a prophet, he was just a guy that kind of welcome there. Like he's saying clearly that's not who Jesus was, that he's the actual embodiment of God on the earth. He's the glory of God. So I think this also.
Yeah.
This representation of his essence different than our made in our image that we have in Genesis,
Well,
Are they common words?
there's similar ideas.
Okay. Cause isn't the Hebrew like in Genesis like the Leon or something like that, which
You lost me.
the in Genesis where it talks about we're made in
God's image.
God's image and doesn't the Hebrew mean something like closer than his shadow or like his shadow or something like that?
Well, verse 26, okay. And God says, let us make man in our image and according to our likeness. I don't know what you're asking me.
Well, is it the same? This is
Different,
Hebrew, the
that's-
other one's Greek, is it?
It's different. He's going at it at a different angle.
Okay.
What's going on here are artworks. This is Julie talking. A two-dimensional image, a three-dimensional image. That's what he's saying. According to our two-dimensional image and our three-dimensional image. Get the idea? According to our painting and our statue. That's what he's saying here. In Hebrews, this is a philosophical discussion. This is what's our pastor's name? No, the one before Daniel.
Scott?
Scott. This is Scott talking. Okay, if that helps you.
Yes.
Scott was, you remember Scott?
Yeah. Looks like a pops. Like
What?
A painting, he looks like a little painting.
That's funny. So, again, think in terms of the contrast with the prophets that he's making here. He spoke to us by a prophet before, but now it's by a son. So anything Jesus says is closer to the truth. He is God's nature. So you can almost hear him going, why are you doing this? Though he hasn't said that yet. You don't know that yet, but that's where he's headed. Oh, by the way, just how powerful is this guy? He upholds the universe by the word of his power. That's pretty good. He upholds the universe. Or in a net, he sustains everything. Greek, bearing everything in the speech of his power is what we got here. It's not the normal word for word. It's not a reference to scripture. Okay, it's in what he speaks. Bearing everything in the speech of his power, or if you will, in the expression of his power. What? Okay.
I'm sorry.
Oh, okay. Then he goes here. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to do that. After cleansing sin, he sat down. So after making purification for sin, he sat down at the right hand of the greatness in the heights, okay, of the majesty in the heights, the heavenlies. After making cleansing of sin. Think about what he's saying. This Jesus who created the world, who sustains it by his speech, this all-powerful being, created the world. He's going to inherit everything, by the way. What did he do? He took care of sins, my point. He took care of us after making purification for sin. Prophets, good. Son of God making purification for sin, better. That's what he's doing. And Yeah, the prophets are good, but this, after making purification for sin. That's a big deal. We're gonna stop here. What? Yes,
Are you, it's how it's in the two, where that's been happening,
yes, they're doing the same thing.
so that whole chunk was added.
Yeah, well, want to read a little note? Oh, here, no, it's not. It's because they're quoted, it's a quotation. Sorry. Each Bible does their own thing. Okay, so pay attention to the footnotes and stuff. So, we're gonna stop here. Why are you going for prophets? He made purification for sin. Of all the things he could have said about Jesus, that's what he focuses on. Purification for sin.
So none of this is new to us because we've had the Bible available to us for a long time. But the people who heard this would have been revelation.
It was not, they knew all this.
They knew it also.
Oh, yeah, this is what standard Christian teaching was.
Yeah, I realize that.
So, and that's what he's kind of doing is. So why are you going back? You're going to a prophet, good as they are, but you have this. It makes no sense to the author.
So he's talking to people that are trying to be Christian.
We don't know that yet, but yes, they are. A standard understanding of Hebrews is he's writing to those who, for some reason, are wanting to be more Jewish in their Christianity. And he's going, that makes no sense.
We have multiple letters that kind of address the same.
Right, so he's going
That was a big issue.
in parts, yes. So that just makes you wonder. Well, you know what? I like verse 4. I'd rather. So he sits down at the right hand, and he became so much better than the angels as he has inherited the name superior to theirs. So now he's going in two different directions. So he's better than the prophets. And now I'm going to throw this out. He's better than the angels, in case you want to go there. And now I'll turn my attention to that. But it's better than the prophets. That's what Jesus says. Why go back? This makes no sense. All right, we'll pause here. Brooke, would you close this in prayer, please? I'm going to stop sharing. I'm going to stop recording, right?